Hey, sweetie. Hope this finds you well. Um, why don't you relax, go to bed, and let me take you away in the tradition of Homer to the days of the ancient Greeks and to hear the story, or at least the first part of the story, about the morning of the Earth Mother. In the island of Sicily, high up among the mountains, there was once a beautiful valley called the Valley of Enna. It was seldom that a human being, even a shepherd, climbed so high, but the goats, being able to climb by the steepest and most slippery paths over the roughest rocks, knew well what soft, sweet grass grew there. Sheep, too, and sometimes wild swine, found their way to this spot. Not another mountain valley anywhere was quite like this one. It was never visited by any of the winds except Zephyrus, who was always mild and gentle, Zephyrus being the west wind. The grass was always green, and the flowers were always in bloom. There were shady groves on every side, and numberless fountains of sparkling water. It would have been hard to find a more pleasant spot. This valley of Enna was the home of Ceres, the Earth Mother, one of the wisest of the goddesses. In fact, the valley owed its beauty to the presence of Ceres, and the wonderful vegetation which covered the whole island of Sicily was due to her influence, for she was the goddess of all that grows out of the earth, and knew the secret of the springing wheat and the ripening fruits. She watched over the flowers, the lambs in the fields, and the young children. The springs of water, too, which came from hidden places of the earth, were hers. One day, Persephone, the little daughter of Ceres, was playing in the meadows of Enna. Her hair was as yellow as gold, and her cheeks had the delicate pink of an apple blossom. She seemed like a flower among the other flowers of the valley. She and the daughters of the valley nymphs, who were children of about her own age, had taken off their sandals and were running about on the soft grass in their bare feet, much like someone I know who loves to feel grass in her own bare feet, especially the ones in Battersea Park, it seems. Anyway, they were as light-hearted as the little lambin kids. Soon they began to gather the flowers that grew so thick on every side: violets, hyacinths, lilies, and big purple irises. They filled their baskets, and then their dresses, and twisted long sprays of wild roses around their shoulders. Suddenly, Persephone saw a flower which made her forget everything else. This flower seemed to be a strange, new kind of narcissus. It was of gigantic size, and its one flower stalk held at least 100 blossoms. Its fragrance was so powerful that it filled the entire island, and might be noticed even out at sea. Persephone called to her playmates to come and see this wonderful flower, and then she noticed, for the first time, that she was alone, for she had wandered from one flower to another till she had left the other children far behind. Running quickly forward to pick this strange blossom, she saw that its stalk was spotted like a snake, and feared that it might be poisonous. Still, it was far too beautiful a flower to be left by itself in a meadow, and she therefore tried to pluck it. When she found that she could not break the stalk, she made a great effort to pull the whole plant up by the roots. All at once, the black soil around the plant loosened, and Persephone heard rumbling underneath the ground. Then the earth suddenly opened, a great black cavern appeared, and out from its depths sprang 4 magnificent black horses drawing a golden chariot. In the chariot sat a king with a crown on his head, but under the crown was the gloomiest face ever seen. When this strange king saw Persephone standing there by the flower, too frightened to run away, he checked his horses for an instant, and bending forward, snatched the poor child from the ground and placed her on the seat by his side. Then he whipped up his horses and drove away at a furious rate. Persephone, still holding fast to her flowers, screamed for her mother. Helios, the sun god, saw how the gloomy-faced king had stolen Persephone away, and Hecate, who sat nearby in her cave, heard the scream and the sound of wheels. No one else had any suspicion of what had happened. Ceres was far away across the seas in another country, overlooking the gathering in of the harvests. She heard Persephone's scream, and like a sea-bird when it hears the distressed cry of its young, came rushing home across the water. She filled the valley with the sound of her calling, but no one answered to the name of Persephone. The strange flower had disappeared. A few roses lay scattered on the grass, and near them were a child's footprints. Ceres felt sure that these were the traces of Persephone's little bare feet, but she could not follow them far, because a herd of swine had wandered that way and left a confusion of hoof-prints behind them. Ceres could learn nothing about her daughter from the nymphs. She sent out her own messenger, the big white crane that brings the rain, but although he could fly very swiftly and very far on his strong wings, he brought back no news of Persephone. When it grew dark, the goddess lighted 2 torches at the flaming summit of Mount Etna and continued her search. She wandered up and down for 9 days and 9 nights. On the 10th night, when it was nearly morning, she met Hecate, who was carrying a light in her hand as if she too were looking for something. Hecate told Ceres how she had heard Persephone scream, and had heard the sound of wheels, but had seen nothing. Then she went with the goddess to ask Helios, the sun god, whether he had not seen what had happened that day, for the sun god travels around the whole world and must see everything. Ceres found Helios sitting in his chariot ready to drive his horses across the sky. He held the fiery creatures in for a moment while he told Ceres that Pluto, king of the underworld, had stolen her daughter and had carried her away to live with him in his dark palace. When Ceres heard this, she knew that Persephone was lost to her, and she kept away from the other gods and hid herself in the dark places of the earth. She liked to keep away from the earth's people as well as from the gods, for wherever she went, she was sure to see some happy mother with her children around her, and the sight made her feel very lonely. She sometimes envied the poorest peasants, or even the little bird mothers in the trees. One day, she sat down by the side of the road near a well in the shade of an olive tree. While she was sitting there, the 4 daughters of Peleus, carrying the golden pitchers on their shoulders, came down from their father's palace to draw water. Seeing a sad old woman sitting by the well, they spoke to her in a kindly way. Not wishing them to know that she was a goddess, Ceres told the 4 young princesses that she had been carried away from her home by pirates, and had escaped from being sold for by a slave by running away the instant that the pirate ship reached the shore. "I am old and a stranger to everyone here," she said, "but I am not too old to work for my bread. I could keep house or take care of a young child." Hearing this, the 4 sisters ran eagerly back to the palace and asked permission to bring the strange woman home with them. Their mother told them that they might engage her as a nurse for their little brother, Demophoon. Therefore, Ceres became an inmate of the house of Peleus, and the little Demophoon flourished wonderfully under her care. And I'm going to stop here and pick it up in part 2 because I'm nearing the 10-minute mark. So find part 2 of this story. Okay?